Vallabh here, and today we're going to talk about the brand new Canon EOS 200D. This is also known as Canon Rebel SL2 in the US and KISS X9 in Japan. This is Canon's latest entry-level, world's smallest DSLR. So although it's entry-level, but let me tell you, it actually sits above the 1300D. So 1300D would be much cheaper, and because that's old, also in India you would get that for about 25,000, I guess. This one will cost you about 44 to 45,000 with an 18 to 55mm lens, and you'll also get it with 18 to 55 plus 55 to 250. I forgot the price, but that would be close to about, I think, 56,000. So this is not cheap. For an entry-level camera, you'd get some of those, let's say the 1300D for example, also Nikon's D3300 and even 3400 at slightly less than this one. So this is not cheap, but this has a lot going for it, and that we'll find out in this particular review. So first of all, when you talk about the body, now this is not a plastic body. It's mostly made of composite material, which is not exactly plastic, but it's not metal as well, so it's kind of in between. So it's tougher than plastic, so it'll kind of retain that durability. It feels nice, does not feel cheap, but at the same time does not have the durability, or let's say you cannot use it for too much time outdoor, or it won't I think withstand strong elements like a lot of rains or water or snow or those kind of stuff. So yeah, it's an entry level, so it's kind of used more or less casual manner, and that's how it is built, but it is premium looking. And despite of being the smallest DSLR, it's kind of, I think it weighs by about 400 something grams. That's the weight of an iPad 10-inch, so it's almost weighs as much as an iPad. And apart from that, what you have, lots of controls and buttons here, not as much as some of those mid-range Canon cameras, but still, let's check out some of those actually. So on the front, you obviously have the sensor. It's an APS-C sensor. Apart from the sensor, you'll see the lens release button, you'll see the flash button, and also you see another customizable button over there. So on top, you have two dials. That's a good thing in an entry-level camera, because generally, let's say the Nikon entry-level cameras like the 3300 and 3400, I think they have one dial only, I'm not sure, but still two dial is very useful. Now you have the power, the shutter release button, you have a front dial, you have ISO buttons and all these things. You have the shooting mode dial, which is usual. You have the typical program mode, aperture priority, shutter priority, full manual mode. You also have some scene modes and blah blah whatnot. And then you have the lever that will switch off the camera, switch on to still mode, and then goes to the video mode. You have the accessory hot shoe mount there. You also have the sensor marks and your Wi-Fi marks and the speakers and stuff, and then the eyelet for your lanyard. Now on the left side is one of the biggest advantages, one of the most loved, one of my favorite thing in an entry-level camera, and for which I hated the Nikon D3400, is the presence of an external mic. The 200D has an external mic jack, whether the D3400 does not have. The D3300 had, by the way. So you can record audio, you can use a lapel mic, so whenever your camera is at the distance, you can use the lapel mic, and you can attach it here so that you can record high quality audio from there. You can also use your Rode microphones and other microphones to use to record much better audio quality from this one. The built-in mic of cameras can never lower down the background noise as much as a professional or an external mic does. Apart from it, you also have the GPS, the remote control there, not the GPS, the remote control. What's on the right side? On the right side, you have the HDMI port, and then your charging cable. Now this is a mini USB actually. I would have liked a micro USB, then probably you could have charged this camera, this battery with your smartphone charger as well, but that's not to be. So you have to use a very old mini USB charger to charge this. If you have to charge this battery inside the camera. But Canon obviously provides an external external battery charger, so you can always use that, unlike the Sony mirrorless cameras, which do not provide an external battery case. So if you're carrying extra battery with this one, you can make sure while your batteries get charged at home, you can still use the camera with that other battery. At the bottom you get the tripod mount, you get the battery as well as the SD card slot. Now I probably would have liked the SD card slot to be somewhere here, but then that's okay, it's entry level after all. Now one problem I found here again is that whenever this camera is mounted on a tripod, you cannot open this completely. It kind of gets stuck about there, and you cannot take out the battery or the SD card slot. So let's say your camera is on the tripod and you want to quickly swap the SD card. It's not possible to do. You have to take the camera off the tripod. But if you have a quick release plate on your tripod, that's no problem. But with the entry level tripod, there might be a slight time wasted on that. So on the back side, you have the fully articulating touchscreen. Fully articulating means it goes around 270 degree, and that is the best form of articulating, tilting, whatever screen you call it, best form of screen that I like, because you get some tilting screen. So with the tilting screen, it's very hard to see the screen whenever you're holding the camera like this. Whenever the screen goes down, then it's hard to see when your camera is like this, like you're looking from upside. But this one, it gives you almost every angle possible to look at wherever the camera is. So that's really cool. Now just one problem I found here is that when you're let's say looking at yourself, you're shooting yourself and you have the mic inserted here, sometimes this movement is kind of restricted. You cannot go here, cannot go here, so somewhat restricted here, but you can get around that, but that's something to take note of. Apart from that, you have a viewfinder, which is a relatively small viewfinder. You have the menu button, info, and the diopter settings, and some of the other buttons on the right side of the screen. However, I almost always use the touch screen and the controls on the touch screen, because the touch screen is so good and it's so responsive, you'd feel like you're using a smartphone, and the menu is also very well laid out. Having said that, let's take a look at some of the menu items and some of the UI basically. So when you switch on the camera, you'll be greeted with a quick setting panel, and you'll see what mode your camera is on, your ISO, and exposure compensation scale and those kind of things. If you want to quickly change some of this, press Q, and then you can select. You can either select by rotating the rotating dial, and better still, just touch any of those, touch twice to change those. Go back again, and go back anytime just by pressing the shutter release button. And then you can go to the main menu there. The menu is laid out very nicely, and I love the black background. You can also change that, by the way. And one of the great thing with this entry-level camera is that it gives you an option of having this menu in a guided mode. I generally do not like this because I'm not a beginner, of course, but if you're not very well versed with DSLRs like this, you can switch on the guided mode from the settings, and then it'll take you step by step into the settings mode, and it will tell you what settings exactly it is, what it does and those kind of things. But overall, you get the first you get the shooting mode. It's nicely laid out. You have tabs and everything, very responsive. Then you have the playback menu, the system menu, and those kind of things. When you switch to the video with the lever over there, you also get an additional video menu. So overall, the build, the design quality, the button layouts and everything, the ease of use and the UI is absolutely brilliant of this, and very Canon-like, which is very welcome. Now talking about some of the features, first of all, the autofocus system. Now here comes two very different things, combinations actually. So if you want to use the viewfinder which generally is an advantage of the DSLR because it has a mirror, so it has an optical viewfinder. It's very fast, but the autofocus system through the viewfinder is very old. It's only a 9-point autofocus system, so you cannot fine-tune the autofocus points. They are very widely spaced. However, the live view mode houses Canon's very famous Dual Pixel CMOS autofocus system that first came in 8TD. That's absolutely brilliant, and I almost never used the viewfinder. Even for still, I ended up using the live view actually, because in the live view the coverage is much wider and finer, and due to the dual pixel CMOS autofocus system, which is a PDAF autofocus system, by the way, PDAF actually, face detection autofocus system, just like the one through the viewfinder. So the autofocus speed is as fast, but the accuracy is more. However, when I compare this dual pixel CMOS autofocus system with some of the higher cameras, like let's say the Canon 77D, the 77D's response was much faster. The autofocus system was more on point, and the accuracy was more than this one. I just suspect it maybe the coverage is not as much as the 77D, but the moment you start using the live view for both still and video, you're practically nullifying one of the main advantages that DSLR has over a mirrorless camera. That's battery life. It has Canon's latest 24MP sensor and has a DIGIC 7 image processing engine, so the image details are very good. The colors are very natural, very pleasant, even for a JPEG. Of course, it supports RAW, but even if you simply want to click JPEG and transfer them via Bluetooth to your phone and upload to, let's say, social media sites, you can do that, because generally Canon's JPEGs are very good, and the colors are very pleasing and towards the natural, so I love that. At times it kind of slightly over processes the JPEG, specifically under low light, but still way better than your smartphone. Also, the RAW definitely has more dynamic range than the JPEGs. Here you can bring out much more details than you can with the JPEGs, but still the dynamic range is not as strong as some of Canon's mid-range camera, and not even as strong as, let's say, Nikon's entry-level or Sony's entry-level cameras like the A6000 or the D3400. The good thing of being a DSLR and a Canon DSLR is that you have access to almost all the Canon DSLR lenses, be it an EFS lens or an EF lens. EFS lenses are made for crop sensors like this one, for APS-C sensor, so you can use all the EFS lenses, and also you can use the EF lenses which are actually made for full frame, and you can use those here too. But why would you use those? In case you have this one as a secondary camera, then probably you can, and you have your primary camera as full frame camera like the 5D Mark IV, for example, or the 6D Mark II, then you can use those lenses here as well. The video quality is decent and very comparable to the entry-level Nikon and also the Sony mirrorless cameras. But then there's one thing: Canon still does not support 4K video recording. This maxes at 1080p 60 FPS. I generally record my videos at 1080p 30 FPS, like this kind of simple videos. But then whenever you're traveling, and specifically if you wanna create really high quality videos, then 4K is a very accepted norm these days. A lot of software support those. In fact, the mirrorless cameras almost always support 4K, so that's one department, the video resolution, where this one and in general the Canon DSLRs fall behind the mirrorless ones. But overall, yeah, you can see the videos are sharp enough. Under low light they show some kind of noise or artifact, but for most part they are decent and can be used for personal and amateurish work assignments as well. Now, talking about the price is where the fun begins. So I told you the price of this one along with the 18 to 55mm lens is about 45,000. The next up there was the Canon 800D, cost about 54,000. 800D is a considerably better camera than the 200D. It's slightly bulkier, it's slightly larger than this, but it has a brilliant 45-point autofocus system. It has a better color reproduction. It has better subject trackability. Almost everything is better than this one. So if you can spend those 8,000, then I would strongly suggest go for the 800D. And if you can spend slightly more, actually the 77D would be awesome for both video and still work. Like if you really want to go cheap, you can still get the 1300D, but you would not get the video performance of this one. If you want better still and you do not have any DSLR, you can go for the Nikon D3400. But if you want kind of a more all-rounder and is ready to pay slightly more, this one makes great sense. But again, if you can still pay 8 to 10k more, skip this and actually go for the Canon 800D, much better. If you like this video, please hit the like button, ask anything related to the 200D and we'll try to answer them all. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video to share the love. You can subscribe to our channel right over there. The icon should be at the center. And till the next one, ciao.